All right, everybody, welcome to What Up Sports. How are you guys doing out there? Hey, we have a great group of individuals with us today. We got Tony Gomes from Saddleback College. We got Joe Connie from Kenyatta College. We got Robert Leroy, which you all know, and me, myself, and I, Chris. How are you guys doing out there? I know you're all doing good because
They
we
all
are.
said they're great, Chris.
I know, I gotta do that. Jeez. Gentlemen, are you ready?
Let's do it.
100%. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. Rob, you got the question, so bring it on, buddy.
You know what? We got two great coaches here, and this is a you guys are going to really fill in a lot of what the thought processes are here. We are seeing more and more these days, a lot more injuries in pro sports. I don't necessarily know in your levels that you guys are coaching in what the injury situations are. Some of my thoughts are how people are training now, or they're just so overtrained and they're so fine tuned now that it's more prevalent. I don't know. I'm not in it anymore. I mean, I used to run the beach, that's how I worked out. There was weightlifting, but it wasn't what it is today. The athletic training, the science behind it, it's so incredible how far it's gone. But is it also playing into there's more injuries now? There's more, you're always seeing these teams and they're decimated, the Detroit Lions, the San Francisco 49ers, and it seems to be these Achilles tendons and stuff like that are just blowing and all that stuff. And so I want to put it out to you guys. What are your thoughts on, first of all, why are we having more injuries in sports? And then in your process that you're training kids these days, how does injuries play into the way you train them?
Well, for me, I want to say field turf and those types of things have, we all played on natural surfaces, and so I want to say that field turf has a lot to do with injuries. I like to address for me, I would say, the shoes and the cleats and the giveaway, like I think that needs to be addressed. The footwear, I think, has a lot to do with the turf and have they really come up with the proper shoe for give when there's contact and those types of things. When you talk about Achilles tendons and those types of things, like we'll go with Christian McCaffrey. That guy's probably has the strongest calves on planet Earth, and is his Achilles tendon strong enough to keep up with? It's all about balance, and the more muscle you have, the more things you're going to pull. So, I mean, the guy's a super freak. I watch him train. I watch videos of what he does. He can box jumps like 6 feet, and the guy's a machine. But I mean, it just takes one move of a more powerful muscle right next to another one to snap that thing. And so it's a quality balance control type of thing, where you can overdo one thing and snap another thing right behind it. So, those are my things. Is the more muscle you got, the more you're going to pull.
I agree with that. I agree with that, what he just said, because I mean, the more muscle mass you're going to have, your tendons, your ligaments, and everything else, they got to hold up, right? We can't strengthen those, right? And I feel like the training that these guys are doing, just my observation, and this is what I try to teach and coach. I try to teach these guys how to really engage muscle, right? We don't want to move weight, right? Like a lot of guys are pushing weight, right? Like, oh my God, let me max out on my bench or my squat or my deadlift or whatever. They got terrible, mechanics. They have a not good form, and they're moving weight, but at the same time, they're not really at all engaging muscle tissue. And in order to do that, they have to really understand what they're doing, how to really. I always say, like, carry weight on the muscle. If you're gonna do a movement, then keep the weight on the muscle. Keep that tension going the entire time. Really understanding mind muscle connection while you're doing it. Let's build that phase before we start getting to some really, developed training regimens down the line, which these NFL guys, NBA guys are doing. And there's nothing wrong with it. I see a lot of guys that are doing it, but they just don't understand their body awareness. They have no body awareness. They don't understand their mechanics. And that's going to sacrifice once they start doing better movements. Everybody wants to copy the next guy. I mean, there's so many great tools out there for these athletes now. And I just don't think we do enough of teaching. I think there's a lot of, YouTuber coaches who are going to look at these videos and say, I can teach that. What is it? Like, I'll just get a set of weights and, I'll just have these, here, just go squat. Here, just go bench. Here, do these movements. Here, let's do some box jumps. But nobody really understands anything behind the movement. And because of that, we have injury. And my other thought about injuries prevalent is what I see. And I see this at the junior college level. I've seen this at the high school level. I've seen it, my experience in sports for a long time is, a lot of these kids now are not playing three sports like we did. Like, you know what? It's like guys were knocking on my door. Hey, Joe, it's like baseball season. We're gonna go down the park. We're playing strikeout. Nobody plays baseball for the hell of it anymore. Nobody does. Nobody's going to go down to the, have a run of basketball or ride their bikes or, play football out on the park. And I feel like we all played three sports. It kept us balanced. It kept us really aware of how to compete at a certain level too. Like, and so now we got these 10, 11, 12-year-old boys that are out there traveling all over America, and there's all this money to be made. And these kids are getting hurt early. Like they don't have arm hair, but they're throwing a curveball. Like why? Why? So why are we doing that? Like it's just not a good idea. Actually, I'm 7 months out of shoulder surgery, and my surgeon was a baseball coach, and she actually was, just talking to the Tampa Bay Devil Rays about all of this. And it's just what we see, and what she says is just a lot of one sport athletes throughout the whole thing, doing repetitive injuries, repetitive motion stuff all the time. So we did one job. So I used to be a butcher. I'm doing one job and I'm cutting all day long. Eventually, so I'm going to break down. And what about these baseball players or basketball players? The same thing, like the way they're moving. And I understand as far as like now the turf, that's definitely going to bring some other fluke injuries. But I see much worse injuries from repetitive stuff, guys. That's what I see.
I'm going to jump right in because I think you kind of nailed that so well, because we were out. Kids aren't even outside anymore.
No.
Playing a sport, they're playing that one sport. But we used to run up and fall down a hill, and we were on our bikes all day after school, or riding to school and back from school. We were in the pool. We were, playing kick the can or whatever, smear everything. I won't say it, but you know what I'm talking about. But we were out there with our friends doing all sorts of different things. And is that really what's going on? They're so specialized now, and it's all about the money, that they're doing the one thing. And that's developed so hard that all the other stuff has fallen away. Being a swimmer and a football player, I actually became a swimmer because of flexibility. Like I was too tight. And by becoming a swimmer too, and surfing and all that, how much more flexibility I got in that, and my muscles got longer. They weren't so tight and stuff like that. Coach Combs, I mean, are you on that same wavelength right now? Like that whole, how do you do that as a coach? Do you look at the kids like that too?
Oh, 100%. I think Joe nailed it on the head right there. We were all, whatever season you were in, that's the sport you were playing. And multi-sport guys create just different athletes that know their bodies better, just tougher. I get that. We try to combine our training. It's got to be well balanced. It's got to be the cardio and the fast movements and the footwork and the weight training all together. So it's a definite well balanced mixture combination to put a good athlete together. And we monitor our guys really well in the weight room, and we've been very fortunate to stay pretty healthy. But you see, Joe, I'm a Niner fan too. And I mean, the depletion of our team this year was hard to watch. And it's like, man, I'm sitting here going, man, but again, he nailed it. He nailed it with the three sport athlete. Like, like these kids, there's like 2% of kids on the planet now that can play all three sports. And, they'd rather sit on their phones at home and, be antisocial. And, yeah, man, that was just a fabulous point that Joe made there, and I agree 100% with him.
Yeah, Chris, I wanted to jump to you real quick. I want to preference something to you real quick. Is
preferencing? Come on.
Well, no, and I'm preferencing it to you because and I want to hear your thought, but I also want you to touch on the fact that when we used to play sports and we played 3 sports, when your one sport was over, you were done and you went on to the other sport. Like, when did that change?
When did that change? Probably late 90s, early 2000s, when the travel ball really travel basketball, travel baseball, because they want you to play 9 months, 10 months out of the year. And that's something that I noticed way back when just coaching. And I want to get back on hold on. I got so many thoughts that are running through my head right now. It's freaking ridiculous.
Good
So
one.
kind of stop myself and just get going on one area. Okay. So here we go. Okay. So as we all know, each sport has different muscle groups that we use in our body, and everybody has a different anatomy than everybody. Like my anatomy is different than Joe's, Rob's, Tony's. Everybody's got that. Okay. When we use these different muscle groups playing these different sports, it makes us that much better and that much broader, our body's that much more physical. So I think that's one of the reasons why you saw more three-sport athletes back then and not as many injuries. Now people are trying to be more succinct, trying to build up on X instead of realizing that they got XYZ out there that they need to work on. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen. Do you guys not see that as well with a lot of the younger ball players? Because that's something that I was noticing as I was scouting ball players, as I was watching. Oh, I only play one sport. Well, you only do X, Y, and Z, and then they couldn't do certain agility things and so on and so
They
forth.
just don't have the level to compete because they just are just so just like I just play baseball. Okay. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and this is was discouraged. So my sons are 33 years old now. And so and now I have a daughter who's 19. She's at San Jose State. She plays. And during my son's journey, my one son was definitely, this AAU player who played on a high level AAU team. But even at that age, they still wanted you to, hey, there was a big demand to play a lot of basketball during the season. But there was a lot of those guys that were still playing multiple sports. When my daughter came into play, it was very discouraged. And she was a hell of a little soccer player, basketball player. And I loved the way she competed. That's what made her her. And then when you have other coaches who are like, hey, you know what? She needs to just pick her sport. What, at 10, 11? 12, like, and then here we go, right? And then it just goes to like that level. And now what I'm seeing, even, I was warned, BPPC, be aware what you say. I see it at this 10U level of travel A ball for softball, right? I don't know, baseball too. Now you have 10-year-old like travel, and now these coaches are aware of this, so they're bringing in guys like me to do strength programs for these 10, 11 years old peak guys. And I'm getting calls from moms and dads, please put little Joey on a program, on a meal plan and a weight program. And I'm like, man, he hasn't even gone through puberty, right? Like, can we just let him be a boy? Can we just let him eat his PBJ and just be okay with it? Or we're going to give him an issue with a bad relationship with food already at a young age? So we need to be aware of the mental status first and foremost before we get in this other stuff. So this is a really good topic. There's so many ways of kind of dipping and diving into this, but I definitely agree. I hope this will change. I just don't think it's going to because there's too much money that's being made today.
Hey,
I
Tony,
wanna,
real
yeah,
quick, hold on. Hold on, Rob. Tony, real quick. Are you hearing, because I've been out of scouting for a while and recruiting for a while, are you hearing now kids say, yeah, well, my coach doesn't want me to play football or basketball or swim or hockey or anything like that? Because I know I heard that a lot a bunch of years back. So I was just curious to know if that onus is still out there.
Yeah, I mean, you hear it, and that obviously, like as the coach that's saying that's running a business. He wants, like you say, he wants to keep that kid for 10 months and keep that money rolling in. So, this travel ball stuff is all my kids that I give lessons to and the kids that I talk to, I ask them all the time, what are you learning from your travel ball coach? I mean, is he taught you to hit the inside part of the base? Is he telling you to attack short hops? Is he telling you to read balls and dirt? What part of the game are you learning, or are you just learning how to put your uniform on and get in a hotel and get on a bus? So for me, I just think a lot of it has to do if the kids, if I hear them say that, I'll advise them to play other sports. I'm like, I don't care what you do, but play multiple sports because don't listen to a travel ball coach because that guy doesn't have your best interest at heart at all.
I
Hey,
love it.
you're hitting some stuff, and I wanted to bring another topic into this conversation because we're talking athletic training and then one sport and all that stuff. I want to talk to you guys. When you look in these kids' eyes, do you see the burnout?
I don't see burnout. I just don't see intensity or fire or kids that just the entitlement, the just the kid that does the thing for his parent. He doesn't do it because he loves it. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I couldn't have lived without sports. I was a sportaholic. Like if I didn't have sports, I don't know what I would have done with my life. Like I loved it, and all the work that came with it was easy because when you love something, the work is easy. I just don't see the fire and passion. I'm in Orange County, so I got a lot of talented kids. But the younger kids, no. But the older guys that I work with, they want to play in the major leagues. They have a whole different mindset. But the kids, man, they got too many distractions going on. They got video games, phones. I mean, they're so distracted. They're socially awkward. It's like, man, it's a tough time for young kids. I'm glad I am not a child these days.
Yeah, because everything's recorded now.
Exactly.
Everything you do is recorded.
Yeah.
Everything you do, people know. You can't hide anymore. We used to do dumb things. Nobody knows anything about it.
Yeah.
But I think the question I was going with, there on the burnout is, do you guys talk about rest? Like,
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I talk
I
to
want
my
to hear
guys.
what you guys have to say about that.
You got to get your rest. Burnout. I don't think kids are burned out because they're not getting enough rest. I think they're burnt out by their parents.
Yeah.
I think the parents want it more than the kid does. These parents are shoveling out all this money for travel ball and all of this stuff. Hoping that their kid will pay for college. I get it. Everything's expensive, but I don't think the kids is burnt out as much about the sport as he is about maybe what's going on at home and the pressure of what comes with sports. Sports is, it can get you that degree in your hand, and it can get you college paid for. That for some households, that's huge. Not everybody in the world can pay for their kids to go to college. So I think they're more burnt out about the pressure of having to be the dude and needing to be the guy on the team and am I in my peer pressure group? Am I popular? All of these things. It's a lot. So I think they're more burnt out from those situations rather than actual burnout.
I'm going to ask this because it's so different from my time to now. But back in the days, you didn't have the travel balls, you didn't have all that stuff. And if you were a dude, you were the dude. If you were a stud, you were going to be the stud. Didn't matter whether you had travel ball or whatever. You were the guy that was the stud. And so, not to say, hey, Coach Gomes right here said don't play travel ball, but how much value do you really take in that these kids are doing this travel ball and they're spending money and they're traveling and they are taking all that time? When do you really think is a dude still going to be a dude on the field, whatever sport it is? You're still going to have that guy, right? It's still that same way.
Absolutely. Those guys are just those guys, right? Like, it doesn't really matter. I mean, when I grew up, like, we didn't have a bunch of travel ball teams, but I guarantee you, the guys that were the guys ended up pretty much on the same team or like that other competitive team. Like, whether that was football, basketball, or baseball, all those guys found that team. So, like, we had our own travel teams back in the day, and just like, these days, basically going back on what Tony said about these kids, like burnout, like these kids are just entitled to what they need to have now. And these parents are so afraid of letting their kids fail. It's such a detriment. I see the biggest thing that I'm trying to coach with these kids on a daily basis is trying to get their minds right. They're just they just think like, let me go take some extra swings. I just had a bad game. I'm like, just dude, you're still the freaking guy. Just be okay. You know what I mean? Get your mind right. Like they battle this 24/7. And that's the sad thing because mom and dad are paying so much money. They bank their whole last 10 years of their life sacrificing the weekends with their families and their friends and passing up vacations so they can go on these travel ball tournaments, and now their kid has a chance to go to college, and every time their kid goes out there and they're not performing, those kids are aware of it, and those kids are coming home and their pressure on them is so tough, and I feel so bad for them, and they need more of the mental help than anything else. And that's what I just like building people up. I just like building their minds up. Yeah, we'll get that with, with all the, the strength and conditioning or the ball out there. But it's like, I wish parents would just understand the stress that the kid has on top of what they have. And it was a lot simpler back in our days, guys. It just was a lot more simple. And the guys that were good, just they ended up going places, right? And now it's a little bit different.
Cream rises
Always.
always. Yeah, you're right. Um, this is also the way that I look at it. I've had some ball players in some pretty strenuous places. The Dominican Republic. You find out, going back to the who the dudes are, you literally find out who the dudes are when they're out of their country and they're playing in a foreign land and they're playing against guys that, that chicken's going across the street, that's dinner tonight. Not here you go. As we were talking about a little earlier, that entitlement. You really find out who's who when you go and play down in the DR. Let's just be straightforward there. Um, Getting back on the injury track, I think there was a touch about rest. I think that ball players didn't get enough rest, regardless if it's basketball, football, hockey, baseball, softball. I think that they need to understand that they need to take time for themselves and rebuild their body by just resting, relaxing, getting some sleep. That's just kind of one of those things that's out there that needs to be done. I mean, because if kids aren't getting enough sleep or the proper sleep, I mean, they're up at 5 a.m. to go to a tournament and play at 8 o'clock in the morning sometimes. And they don't, and their last game's not until 9 o'clock at night sometimes. Well, they're not getting proper rest if they've got to come back the next day at 10 o'clock, you know? It's silly little things like that that could prevent some of these injuries in the long run, but who knows? You know, it seems like nowadays it's almost better for pitchers to have Tommy John surgery, which I think is ridiculous, but that's a different story, which I'm not going to go on a tangent there. Um, I think, Rob, that might not be a bad spot to stop this. Anybody got any final words?
No, I mean, as far as me, like coaching personal clients, coaching athletes, the number one thing I go over is usually the rest. That's when, as far as like, if you're trying to, let's keep it to athletics. If you're trying to recover, you're trying to build muscle tissue, you're trying to be at your best, you need time to rest, right? You need time to recover. The first thing I always address is your sleep, right? If we have poor sleep, we're not recovering, we're not replenishing, our hormonal levels coming down, then we're going to have the rise of cortisol that you're going to keep buying, and that's going to cause inflammation and everything else. I could go on and on and on, but rest is number one that needs to be really addressed. And we can always look at different countries. I mean, I think Japan, like, they had their pitchers like just throw once a week, maybe a couple bullpens, but once a week. Like, the people are onto this, and we are definitely just kind of, we're just we're squeezing the most out of everybody. And it's sad to see a lot of these kids that are in a bad position at 18, 19 years old having multiple surgeries. I just don't, I wish we could change it.
To piggyback what Joe's saying here to finalize out here, the rest part for me and what I see my guys going through, and if your mind is racing and if you're mentally just panicked from going 0 for 4 that day, Are you going to sleep well that night? So I really try to set my guys at ease, especially being a baseball coach. Baseball is a game of failure. I really want my guys to be okay with failing. I want them to be fine with it mentally so they can take a deep breath and, have a good night's sleep, because a lot of these kids take that 0 for 4 day into bed with them. And now are they really even getting some sleep? So for me, I'm trying to deal with their mental psyche and preparing them to be okay with failing. And when they're okay with failing, I think they're going to get a lot further.
There's so much in this. I mean, we can't, we're just scratching the surface, I think, on this topic. But, we've talked about how young kids are being pressured to their exercise programs and their diets and all that stuff. And they're just kids and they haven't grown. And they, Coach Gomes and I had that conversation before about, when you get that manly muscle, that you become a man, right? And there's a difference to that. And these kids don't even have that. And I just want to also say that, even as adults, the rest. Chris and I interviewed somebody who's an IFBB bodybuilding champion and went to Miss Olympia. And she ended up burning out. Her body just could not build anymore because she just overdid her her bodybuilding. She took 2 years off the sport just to let her body heal. She's told me, I have to let my body heal. I'm hurting. I'm not sleeping. My mental game's not in. She got divorced. It became this whole problem because she was struggling in that whole thing of trying to keep up, of being a Miss Olympia contestant. She's now back, won another contest, heading to Tokyo this year for Miss Olympia.
Masters. Yeah.
Right. And I had a quick conversation with her and I said, what's the difference? She says, I let my body heal. I'm going in better shape, in a better position to compete because I let myself heal. So that's kind of my little final word on this, that we could go so deep into this. But even as an adult, I think that healing process and letting your body kind of like, let's take a minute. And then I can be better if I do that, I think is also important.
More important as an adult.
Absolutely.
What she did was she tapped out her central nervous system, all her stuff, like the engine's underneath us, right? It's inside of us, right? Our liver, our gallbladder, our spleen, all that stuff. When we start clogging that stuff up due to stress, you know what? We are not going to run right. And so what she did was the healthiest thing she did for her life. Like, this is serious stuff. And so, you know what? I totally agree with really having that downtime and there's a way to fix the body, and it sounds like she figured it out, and it's essential. So yeah, that's part of the game, and I think more people need to be aware of that. So I work with a holistic doctor. We work on a lot of different stuff with me and my health, and you always want to have my own goals as a personal. So like, I need to be aware of my body really well, and if I'm not sleeping and I'm getting racy and my mental health is not well, then, there's definitely some stuff that I need to change. Right. So it's good to have coaches on here that are aware of this, because this is what we need to pay forward for these young kids. That's just me.
Awesome.
And how many young kids actually know what their body does or doesn't do, or how to control it or understand what it's actually saying to them at that given time too?
Yeah, they don't understand it yet. But every day that I'm with my guys, I teach them. Not only about how to engage weights and lift weights, but their lifestyle and how to sustain a whole season, and understanding that how to have proper nutrition and how to fuel their body correctly. If you want to be a top level dude, and you want to be in the MLB or you want to be in UFC, don't tell me that when you're going out and you're doing everything correct as far as training, supplementation, and all this other stuff, but then you're feeding yourself just garbage before a fight or before a competition. Do you think you're actually doing something positive for the result? Do you think you're giving yourself optimal fuel? No, you're not. And so they're going to, that's where, inflammation comes in, and that's where these injuries are going to come into play. But now we're seeing in sports, people are taking it to a different level. I met Christian McCaffrey. I got to meet his whole family, and I got to talk to him and his dad and his mom and his brothers. and how they eat and how they take care of their bodies are on a different level. Same with Nick Bosa and all those guys. So, little by little, we just need to educate these athletes to really understand what this lifestyle they're searching for is going to be something that they can obtain. Um, but they're always looking for that quick fix, the magic pill. And I'm sorry, there's no magic pill, guys. It is, it's freaking hard work and you need to get after it. And it's going to be boring because you're going to do the same thing every day. You're going to eat the same thing every day. You're going to get out to you're going to get out to the field. You're going to see Coach Gomes. He's going to keep hammering you on the same stuff and you got to get up and be ready again. And so if you're not living a lifestyle like an athlete of getting your proper rest and nutrition, and you're not up on video games all night and doing, messing around with recreational drugs or drinking, well, you're not going to, that's not sustainable. You're not going to stay in my program for a whole year and think that you're going to last. I tell them, and you see the ones that are kind of like moving aside because they haven't figured out their lifestyle.
Absolutely.